Hello everyone. In this video I'll be giving you a very brief introduction to Microsoft SQL Server. I posted instructions online for how to download and install SQL Server if you're interested in completing the homework on your own machine. If not, SQL Server is installed in all of the Mahalo computer labs. To open Microsoft SQL Server, go to the Start menu in Windows and type Management Studio. Now, SQL Server will install many different pieces, and you want to make sure that one of those that you have installed is the Management Studio. That is the piece that you'll use to complete the work in this class. You'll see that I actually have the 2012 version on my machine, but as I said, it's very similar to 2014. All of the functionality that you need to complete the homework is exactly the same in the two versions. When it opens up SQL Server, you should see at the front an opening dialog box that asks you to connect to a server. Just leave all of the options at the default. What this is saying right here is that it has created a server called SQL Express, or a server instance, on my local machine. This is the name of the computer I'm using. If we wanted to connect to a database in an organization, this would probably refer to a database that is stored on a different computer. For the purposes of this class, we will store everything on our own local machine. We will use Windows authentication, meaning that the username and password that we use to sign into Windows will also be used to authenticate us in this database. So we don't have to change anything on this front screen, is the short version, and we can just click Connect. On the left, you'll see the Object Explorer. In this class, which is really meant to be an introduction to SQL Server, we'll be focusing on the first two folders, Databases and Security. We won't be focusing on Security for a few weeks yet. For now, I'd like you to expand the Databases folder, and you can see that there are some databases that are already in there. What you'll want to do before you complete any assignment in this class is right-click on Databases and say New Database. All we need to input at this point is a name for our database. I'm going to use Cape Cod, as that is an example that is given in one of the textbooks that I teach out of. And I will click OK. Now you'll see over here on the left underneath databases we have a new database that is called Cape Cod. Let's expand that database to see what information we have about it. Again, we're not going to delve deeply into all of these different folders, but we'll talk about a few of them over the course of the semester. Right now, if we expand the Tables folder, we'll see that we don't have any tables in this database because obviously we just created it. We'll come back to this in a minute and look at a list of tables. On the toolbar, you have several options. One of these options looks like a piece of paper with a star in the left corner. This is the New Query option. So everything that we do in SQL Server will be in a query window. So in this query window, we can write SQL commands, and you'll be learning about some of those commands in this week's materials. For example, one of the things you'll learn is writing select statements. Now I want to point out a few things. First of all, I can't really run this query because I don't have any data or even any tables in my database yet, so this query is meaningless. But I did want to point out a few things that SQL Server does. One of the things that's nice is that the keywords show up in different colors. So SQL commands show up in blue in SQL Server. So you'll see here the words that I typed out that are in blue are reserved SQL commands. These are the commands that you'll be learning in the textbook that are the same across most DBMSs. As you type more things into your queries, you'll see different colors mean different things. So for example, text is always shown in red. Tables and attributes are in this teal color. Advanced functions are in pink. Some other keywords show up in gray. We'll see some gray as we go along. And comments are in green. Now you can leave a comment in your SQL code by doing a / and an asterisk, and that starts a comment. And then you close the comment by putting those symbols in the opposite order, asterisk and /. So you can see everything between the beginning comment symbol and the end comment symbol is in green. And what this means is when we try to execute this command, what SQL Server will do is ignore everything that is in green, everything that is a comment, and it will run the rest of the code. We can save our queries in what's called an SQL script. A script is a file that saves SQL commands. So if we wanted to save this command so that we could run it later, we can go to File, Save, SQL query1.sql, or on the toolbar we can click Save. And you'll see that it saves it as a file type .sql. So I'm going to save this on to my desktop as my first query.sql. Even more important than saving scripts is running scripts. So if you would like to follow along with the examples in the textbook, what I would suggest you do is load some SQL scripts into SQL Server and run them to create and populate a database that then you can follow along and use the examples that are in the book. So let me show you how to do that. If we go to File, Open, File, and I'm going to open the QACS Create Tables. Depending on which class you're in, you might have a .sql file provided to you that is called Cape Cod or Garden Glory. I use several different examples depending on the semester and the class. I'll just open that up, and you'll see here I have a SQL script that has some SQL commands in it to create some tables in the database. Now when I want the system to actually execute this query, there's a couple of things I can do. One of them, which I recommend always doing first, is this parse command. It's a blue check mark on the toolbar. If you click that, what it does is it checks for errors in your command without actually running the data. Here you can see it's given me an error that says that the database QACS does not exist. So it's giving me that error because this script said to use the QACS database. So I'm actually going to create another new database and call it QACS. There it is. Now if I click back within the SQL window, the query window, if I try to parse this again, it says that the command was completed successfully. So if we look over here in our QACS database, if we look at the tables, we'll see that they're still empty. Why is that? Because I use the parse command and not the execute command. It's always a good idea to parse your command first to make sure you don't have any errors before you actually execute it on your database. Another thing you'll want to take note of before you execute your commands is which database you are running your query on. One thing you can do is use the SQL keyword use. So here how we've got in this query use QACS, it will automatically run this query on the QACS database. If we don't have a statement like that in our query, it will run the query on whatever database is shown up here in this window of SQL Server. So here we would want to select Cape Cod or QACS, whichever database we want that query to run on. Now if you click execute, it actually does what is in the command. So here what has happened is this script contains commands to create some tables in a database, If we go over here to our QACS database, we right-click Tables and click Refresh, we can see that it created 6 new tables in our database. Now, if we try to execute this command again, it will give us an error because we've already created these tables, so we can't create new tables with the same name. Okay, so now we've got a bunch of empty tables. We can run another SQL script to insert data into that database. Now we'll be talking about create SQL commands and insert SQL commands in a future module. So it's okay if you don't understand all of this code yet. You will within a few weeks. We'll be talking about the create table commands and the insert into commands. For right now, I'm just showing you how to run the scripts of people who already created these create and insert commands. So I will parse this. Looks like it's going to run correctly. I'll make sure that I'm using the right database and click execute. So now it should have entered data into my tables. So if I right click on any of these tables, it gives me several options. One of them is select top 1000 rows. If I click that, then I can see the data that is in that table of the database. Now, for the first few examples and assignments in the class, we're actually starting with select statements. So you need to work with databases that already have tables and data in them. So what I do is I will provide you with the SQL scripts that will create the tables and put data into the tables. You should run those, execute those scripts before you start doing any of the examples or homework assignments. And as I said, our next step in the next module will be teaching you how to do these create and insert statements yourself. Now that we have a database with tables created and data inserted, we can do our own queries. So now I could do a query, select all columns from customer table, and right there, and with a semicolon. You end every SQL statement with a semicolon. I'll parse that and then execute it. You can see it's given me an error. I did this purposefully because this is one of the most common errors that people run into. They think they've run their select statement properly and then come to realize that they didn't run it on the right database. So I created tables and put a whole bunch of data into the QACS database, and then I did a select query on the master database that doesn't have a customer table. So I need to remember to either select the right database from the drop-down menu or use the keyword at the top, use QACS. When you do a select query, the results of your query will show up in this results window at the bottom of the screen. That's really all you need to know to get started in SQL Server to query data and work with SQL to do all sorts of different things. If you have further questions about SQL Server and how it works, please let me know.